by Heinz
Felipe Massa, bro. We took a look at the 2008 review, and I've never been so sad for a man who was in second place in a driver's championship. What's going on, guys? It is JJ here, back with a new video. It's late here where I'm at, so I do apologize. I have to be a little bit more quiet. But today we're going to take a look at a video that I think is going to be an amazing one. I don't remember where I saw the comment from. I do apologize, guys. I've been responding to so many of your comments over the last couple of days, and it's been really fun. This whole week is going to be buckets of fun. But only one video today. It is the top 10 Formula One drivers of the 2000s. I feel like the majority of the viewers, especially that we've had on this channel so far, all began watching F1 in the 2000s, whether it's 2000s, 90s, 80s. I guess, tell me your era, please, 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 in the comments. Let me know what era you started watching F1 in, because we'll go take a look at Josh Rebel's ranking of the top 10 in that era. And you guys obviously let me know your thoughts on it. Who is the driver that made you fall in love with F1? I think that's the question I want answered the most. Who is the driver that made you fall in love with F1? And I hope they're on this list. So let's take a look at the top 10 Formula One drivers of the 2000s. Let's have some fun with it. Let's get into the video. As well, guys, you can find the original video down in the description below. Go take a look at it. Josh Rebel, he deserves all the
and everything
praise.
breaking and being thrown back into the Stone Age, all very tinfoil hat stuff. Sure enough, it didn't happen. But what we did get was a very interesting decade of Formula One.
He went straight into this. Alright, okay. Okay. We didn't even get like a nice little intro to nothing.
Full of legends and incredible moments and tyre blowouts and traction control and groove tyres. Okay, maybe not all of it was amazing, but looking at the grid back in those days was pretty astounding. And when you look back and try and rank the drivers from that period, it's nigh on impossible. What do you want to do? Save a box of kittens or save a box of puppies?
Don't make me choose!
But without wishing to get woefully off topic here, and seeing as how it's been a while since I did the last one, I figured to move into the twilight of the series and rank the 10 best Formula One drivers of the 2000s. Now, I feel the need to mention a thing or two here, because even I got a bit angsty at a couple of my choices on this list. Basically,
really?
I'm taking the whole decade into account. What I mean by that is that a driver who's done 1 or 2 seasons in the 2000s will probably have less of a chance as someone who has stuck around for the entirety of it.
Ding, 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 people. When you're thinking about this list, when you're looking at this list, remember the entire decade. So I guess that would relate to the drivers who maybe only, who started driving in the 90s and then stop at like 2003, 2004, even if they're at their peak. So keep that into account. Keep that into account, people.
And vice versa. Hey look, this list is entirely opinion based.
No shit, Sherlock.
So don't take it to heart if you disagree with
it's opinion
it.
based,
Just
but it's
comment
more
your top 10
informative
list down below so I could be in the YouTube algorithm's good books for another week. Capiche? Right on. So first we'll dig into the honourable mentions, and oh boy, there are some big cookies in this one. There was Nick Heidfeld, an extraordinary driver who probably has about half a dozen less victories than he deserved. Nico Rosberg, in the days before he jumped ship to Mercedes, putting in some bloody good performances in the Williams before the decade was out. Ralph Schumacher, a very good driver for the likes of Toyota and Williams in this decade before he went on to become Jacques Villeneuve's successor in Time Magazine's Loudmouth of the Year award. Robert Kubica, who is quite handy in the BMW Sauber. I'm going to hell, aren't I? David Coulthard, who is much better than people may think or remember him to be, and also helped lay some of the foundations down for the Red Bull team to be what it is today. And lastly, Mika Hakkinen. Okay, please, I know that some people are going to be asking for my head for putting him in the honourable mentions ward, but him only being in the first 2 years of the decade.
And you guys are going to hate me for this. Who is Mika Hakkinen? I feel like I've seen him on one of the Top Gear videos that we have done, so I've at least heard of his name and I can say it correctly. I think is he Finnish? He's one of the Nordic countries, isn't he? I think he's Finnish. Or Icelandish? I don't know which ones. Whichever ones are really good drivers. So I think Finland. I think I know that much, but I think that's the extent of my knowledge.
Makes it a tad hard to put him in the 10. Besides, it's not as if it makes it bad or anything. It's just how these rankings work on this channel because it's run like a dictatorship. Probably not a good thing in hindsight. Anyways, as always, we're not going to start with number 1 on this list. Rather, we'll start with Juan. Pablo Montoya. I had to make that joke, don't f***ing kill me. Montoya was menacingly fast on a racetrack, and he had proven that long before he entered the world of Formula One. After having set the American open wheel scene alight, Formula One team boss and pro wheelchairist Frank Williams offered him a gig in his team. Not a stupid idea given the success he had with Jacques Villeneuve. And while Montoya looked at fitness in the same way that Megan Thee Stallion's entourage looked at Martin Brundle, his ability behind the wheel shone through, especially in those epic battles with Michael Schumacher, but broke through with a win at Monza in 2001. For the next 2 years, he would stamp his authority at Williams, and was in close contention for the title in 2003. But then the walrus car happened, and then he went to McLaren. And although he would achieve 3 wins at McLaren, making it 7 victories overall in his relatively short F1 career, he's still fondly remembered to this day, some even as amongst the best who have never won the world championship.
Really?
Someone else you could feasibly put into that argument was fellow South American and Ferrari slave man, Rubens Barrichello. When you think Rubens Barrichello, some of you are probably going to be thinking Michael Schumacher's wingman, which kind of sucks because there was more to this guy than 2002 Austria, replacing Eddie Irvine at Ferrari in 2000. He was always meant to be on a hiding to nothing, but that didn't stop him from achieving some fine results. He achieved 11 wins throughout his career, most of them at Ferrari, but some of them at the Brawn outfit in 2009. Whilst he couldn't match Jenson in his time there, he still managed to achieve decent results for sure. And although he was always branded as Schumacher's mule at Ferrari, his 9 wins and 13 pole positions in the 2000s demonstrated his skill. One particular example being at the 2003 British Grand Prix, a performance that I'm pretty sure, even by the more lax standards of the time, wasn't meant to be shown before the watershed. His time at Honda was a little bit of a down.
There's just so much information that he's throwing at me. There was a lot to digest there for a second. So, because I'm trying to remember wins and pole positions in certain races, trying to break it down. I do apologize if I pause
but you can't expect much from him when the car is going slower than the supposed B team at the time. But I mean, hey, losing to a B team driver wasn't the most alien thing to happen back then. Mark Webber experienced that back in 2008. Not that it meant Webber was a bad driver. He definitely wasn't.
He just
when he
went
entered
right
the scene back in
to
2002, not many people would have predicted he'd get points or anything. I mean, for crying out loud, he was in a Minardi. It was about as state-of-the-art as Equio's fleet. But after half the grid blew up on the first corner, and after Mika Salo crumpled under the pressure of battling for 5th place with a Minardi, Webber got points on debut and became the first Aussie to score points in his home Grand Prix. At least, I think he was. And of course, whilst he couldn't do much of anything in that team, he went over to Jaguar, then to Williams, with some amount of success, I suppose. And by that I mean he got 1 podium in 2005. But both these teams had completely died in the arse in terms of their former glory. He was then snapped up by Red Bull for 2007, and by 2009, it seemed to all work out for him getting his first victory at the Nürburgring later that year. More success would follow in the 2010s, but for what it was worth, and how he performed relative to his teammates, this was a pretty decent effort all round. And that debut in 2002 really was a thing of beauty, especially compared to the other debuts.
That car is actually really gorgeous.
In an orgy of smoke and coolant. Ah yes, that poor Sauber didn't fare too well, that's for sure. But in the races after that, Felipe Massa did pretty well, despite being replaced by Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 2003.
Bro, we took a look at the 2008 review, and I've never been so sad for a man who was in 2nd place in a driver's championship. He genuinely thought it was his and that it was done and dusted and that Lewis Hamilton essentially had put himself completely out of it. Felipe Massa winning that race, his home country in Brazil, possibly winning Ferrari what would have been their last ever title. And just one corner ruined it all. That blows my mind still to this day. I appreciate Felipe Massa for it.
He would return to the team for 2004 and 05, performing valiantly and asserting himself as a genuine talent. And that was great for him because in 2006, he was given his big break at Ferrari, replacing Rubens Barrichello. He was now going to be the teammate of Michael Schumacher, and oh boy, that's a hell of a teammate to have. But you know, he did good, winning his first Grand Prix in Turkey that year, and also winning at Interlagos in front of his home crowd in a Ferrari, which is just about as good as life can possibly get. He also had a good season in 2007, despite the indomitable Kimi Raikkonen having been signed on to be his teammate. But 2008 was where he would put forth a serious claim for the title. He drove so bloody well that year and was briefly world champion before Timo Glock's endeavour to walk on water backfired. But with another win at Interlagos, as well as a further 5 wins that year alone to accompany it, Massa was admired by everyone for being a damn good driver, and had that German decided to defy the laws of physics and avoid becoming a meme, would have been a very worthy world champion indeed. On the subject of that race actually, someone who helped Massa almost become champion was a dude who would eventually become champion
Vettel.
himself. Now, me putting
Yeah,
Sebastian Vettel
Vettel,
this low on
yeah.
the list is gonna horrify some
Wait,
people.
I was gonna say because Vettel didn't win any of his titles until the 2010s was over, or the 2000s was over, right? It was 10, 11, 12, 13, wasn't it? Those were his 4 titles. Are we counting 2010? No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. So,
clarify for the next couple people on this list that their debuts in the decade were quite late, so that's all I'm going to say on it. If you haven't got the picture by now, I don't know, slam your head on the desk or throw your phone out the window. Either one of them should do the job. Anyway, Seb made his debut back in the 2007 United States Grand Prix, driving for the BMW Sauber team after Robert Kubica was injured in Montreal. In that race, he would become the youngest point scorer ever, in what was a pretty good drive. Once Robert got better, however, Seb was taken out of the seat and back into oblivion. But then he was given another lifeline, when Scott Speed was given the old heave-ho from Toro Rosso after fighting with an elderly fan, and thus gave Seb a full-time slot on the grid pretty much. That season's car didn't really allow him to do much of anything, but a 4th place finish in China after starting 17th was a remarkable result, although it wasn't quite as remarkable as his maiden win at Monza the following year. That newer Toro Rosso was definitely the goods, but Seb maximised his potential and damn nearly played a hand in deciding the 08 title by planting his car ahead of the McLarens. After being promoted to Red Bull in 09, he began winning on a more consistent basis.
Fair.
He finished runner-up that year, and oh boy, we probably weren't prepared for the beast that was about to come in the decade that followed. Ditto goes for the next dude on this list. Mr. Lewis Hamilton. We're all too used to the prospects of Lewis fighting for wins week in and week out, probably because for virtually his entire career, that's just how it's been. Debuting in 2007 against the Lord of the Eyebrows, not a hell of a lot of people were expecting this guy to be pushing him against the ropes, but heading into the second to last round that year in China, he was leading the standings by 12 points in a time where a win got you 10. He could have won the title that day, lest he found that one pit lane gravel trap in the entire world whilst driving on tyres that were worn down to the canvas. He lost his maiden title in his maiden year of Formula 1. I mean, it sounds gut-wrenching, but my god, man. Arguably one of the greatest, best car or not. In 2008, he would get his maiden title, despite a few things that happened that year, putting in some absolutely Herculean performances, such as at Silverstone in the rain. And even in 2009, when the car was a bit of a heathen, he still found a way to win, because that's just what you would expect from a dude who was just that great behind the wheel. But of course, the car didn't quite match up to the brawn that year, which took Jenson Button to his first and only world title. Before that, Jenson was always regarded as a fantastic talent. His first season wasn't brilliant, but then again, judging off of one season is not the smartest thing in the world to do. You often need to give them a couple of years, or in some people's cases, 5. He sort of bounced around from Williams to Benetton, then to BAR, and almost back to Williams again before contract doings prevented that. And that was strange because in 2004, BAR had done pretty well and gave him a car which could score podiums on a consistent basis. In fact, after having scored no podiums preceding that season, he scored 10 that year. Fantastic then, maybe this will lead to bigger and better things, eh? Yeah, no, not really. The team began to gradually decline, and despite scoring his maiden win in Hungary in 2006, the team began to drown in 07 and 08. Honda then pulled out of the sport, which at this stage was starting to become kinky for them, and left everyone in limbo. But when Ross Brawn bought the team for £1 and went into the preseason testing in 09, they knew they had something. And after winning 6 out of the first 7 Grand Prix, it gave Button enough of a cushion to help him win the World Championship in 2009. It's remarkable that he held on to it, to be honest, especially with what the other teams began to produce in the latter half of the year, although Ferrari were always kind of against the ropes that season, which was a little bit sad because they had Kimi Raikkonen that year, and Raikkonen was absolutely, undeniably, insanely, mesmerizingly fast. Debuting in 2001 for Sauber, he had shown his speed and immediately put himself in Ron Dennis's good books. Signing him up for McLaren in 2002, his success wasn't immediate, primarily because the damn thing was so unreliable, but by 2003, he got his first Grand Prix victory in Sepang. He didn't win anything else that year, but he came so close to winning the title thanks to 11 million second place finishes that year. Had things gone differently, maybe he could have won the title. Meh. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. If Teo Fabi's hair didn't weigh him down, he could have been a 10-time world champion, but hey, here we are now. After his stint at McLaren, he went off to Ferrari for 2007 and immediately won the world championship after McLaren taught himself to process from the inside out. He won races for the remaining 2 years he had for the Scuderia at the time, before eventually deciding, nah, can't be asked with F1 anymore at the end of 2009 and buggered off to do rally and NASCAR. But for me, the season that embodied just how fast
Kimi Raikkonen drove for NASCAR? For some reason, that just doesn't seem real to me. It doesn't seem real to me at all.
Was the year 2005. Finishing second that year. It may seem a little strange to put that above 2007, but there is a good reason why. There was no one that year that extracted more out of the car than he did. 2005 Kimi was scary fast. He won 7 races that year and a total of 13 podiums in the 19 races held that year, if you want to count this one as a race. But Kimi's problem was that the car was still bloody unreliable. It was a huge shame, but you need only watch Kimi that season to understand why there is more to him than the lovable persona where he abhors the media and loves the drink.
Well,
He's a
got
great
the
dude
skills.
and a hell of a
He's
driver,
got the
and
skills that
probably
pays the bills.
2005 driver of the year, even if the champion for that year was the Lord of the Eyebrows. Alright, for his sake, I'll stop calling him that now. Fernando Alonso entered Formula 1 with Minardi, and much like other people who joined that team, he couldn't do too much with it. After taking a year off, he was in with Renault, and immediately took a liking to being up the front, taking his first pole position in Sepang that year, and winning his first race in Hungary. His incredible ability behind the wheel needed a car to match, and in 2005, he got it. With the R25, he took his first world championship, and would win again the following year, to become a national hero in Spain, I think. His time at McLaren almost brought about another world title, but it definitely did just about require the entirety of the waking up.
But the unfortunate scandals. Listen, the fact that this man actually did try to blackmail, pretty much successfully did blackmail McLaren into
to undertake
scandal
marriage
oblivion
counselling. He then
blows
went
my
back to
mind.
Renault, where things didn't really improve so much, but he definitely made hay with what he had, with a little bit of help from resident walking waterbed Flav. His championship in 2005 was, for some people at least, an absolute blessing, because for the entirety of the 2000s up to that point, it was dominated by one man. As with the 1990s, this decade was topped by the one and only Michael Schumacher. From 2000 to 2004, Schumacher racked up 5 world titles, adding on to the previous 2 won in 94 and 95. Even in years like 03, where he was able to ward off the likes of Montoya and Raikkonen. Yeah, crazy to think there was a time where more than 1 or 2 cars vied for the world title. Nah, radical concept. Shumi continued to show why he was the man in Formula 1. His final season, or at least we thought it was his final season, in 2006 proved that even when he was about to bow out, that he was still going to go toe-to-toe with whoever it was to become champion of the world. Problem is, before he got a chance to do that, his engine noped on him in Japan. Still, he retired with 91 total wins, 7 world titles, and only 1 major controversy in this decade, an improvement over the 90s. This decade further added to the legend of the man, and why people, still to this day, regard Michael Schumacher as the greatest to have ever done it. But, you know, there ain't no GOAT. If there was...
I did not realize that which we have seen the F1 titles video, I did not realize that he won 5 in the 2000s. I thought Fernando Alonso was going to be number 1 on this list, to be completely frank with you. That's just me off of the little history that I've slowly been learning from F1. So, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below on the top 10 Formula drivers of the 2000s. Big shout out Josh Revel for this video. It is absolutely sick the way that he can sort of actually the way that he can inform. It's literally like I'm being in school learning F1, and it's something that I love and that I enjoy. Guys, I cannot wait for the F1 season to start this week. It's gonna be... I'm excited. I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much for watching, though. Peace.